Well, hello and welcome back to the Weekend Debate. As you see, we have a change of panel. So, Mick, over to you. Introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name's Mick Murphy. I'm the operations director for a startup that provides resilience training and human performance training to corporate organisations. My journey to get there, I come from a military background, and my background was teaching Special Forces soldiers how to do high altitude parachute insertions. Obviously quite a stressful job, working with a very demanding customer, and to provide that level of training, you know, I had to create a ego, a persona that allowed me to take a lot of risk and deal with a lot of stress, which I did very, very well, and had a full and successful career. My wellness journey changed when I left that job and went to a desk job. So I had this ego and persona that was set up for being this military trainer of Special Forces soldiers in very stressful situations. And then all of a sudden I didn't need that ego anymore. And I started to run a lot of negative thought processes of around being lost and, you know, losing my purpose. And so that I could deal with those thought processes, I started to employ some of the techniques that these guys are talking about, you know, meditation, mindfulness. And what that allowed me to do was get distance from those negative thought processes so that I could catch them nice and early. And in doing so, you know, I was able then to deal with the emotions that they were producing. So it was really, really powerful journey into well-being. And as a result of that, you know, I found that my purpose was to help other people, and that's why I got involved with the company.
How do you do that then? How do you do your bit of de-stressing exactly?
So for me, it was meditation,
right,
and mindfulness. I started off doing, you know, 5 seconds of mindfulness, you know, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, whilst I was out walking the dog, and then I actually found that over time, you know, I caught myself doing it at regular intervals throughout the day. And it's like a snowball running downhill when you employ these techniques. And again, you know, everything that these guys teach is so powerful, and you just need to start, just need to get going. And as you do it and as you pick up the techniques, you know, I heard for years people say, if you get into meditation after a few months, it's really good. Now, the hardest thing is starting and keeping it going. But again, I do describe it as a snowball. Once you start on that journey, it just gathers momentum and rolls downhill. And the techniques that these guys are all talking about are really, really powerful. And now, so more than ever, after, you know, coronavirus, is, you know, we actually need them more than ever. There's a tsunami of mental health coming.
Okay, I want to touch on that later on. But military have one of the highest issues, don't they, with mental health and yes, well-being, because a bell rings and you're meant to do something. I'm into public school, and it's affected me. You know, I'm just drilled to do something. Is that how your life was regimented, basically?
Yeah, I think you have to create a certain ego to be able to cope with high levels of stress and emotional trauma. And to do that, you know, I called it the cloak of invincibility. I wore my cloak of invincibility and nothing could touch me. The issue comes for the military, especially soldiers that have seen active combat, is when they don't need that cloak anymore. And when they don't need that cloak, that's when actually, you know, they start to have, you know, multiple issues. I mean, and that cloak's designed for working in that environment. They put that on, they go to work in that environment, then all of a sudden the cloak of invincibility comes off. They find themselves in an environment that's alien to them, with lacking a purpose that they'd worked all their life for. And that is really, really, you know, sort of, the PTSD is caused by many, many, many different issues. But, you know, certainly that transition from that high stress lifestyle to where you don't have that stress or adrenaline is very, very difficult to make that transition.
And did you find this while you're still in the military, or did you leave and then hit a low and then climb back up? Or what happened?
No, I actually left an operational job where I worked in Afghanistan and Iraq with the UK Special Forces. And when I left that job, you know, I moved into a desk job. And the contrast was huge, absolutely huge. You know, I've gone from 1,000,000 miles an hour dealing with stress and strain and working for a really, really demanding customer, to a job that was really, really quite sedentary and easy, and mundane, really. Mundane.
It's like a bank Monday.
Yes.
Just doing something very. I mean, how you're not the only one that's happened to. That's what I'm trying to get to. It's like they don't prepare you in the army for these sort of things at all, then? Or?
No, I mean, I think they're becoming aware of it more and more, and there are certain things that they do prior to leaving. But actually, there's so much stigma surrounded by mental health that whilst the guys are in. So I work with alpha males my whole career, and not one of those guys would ever mention well-being. However, now that I've left and I speak to the guys that I worked with, they all had some well-being issues on some level. Mm-hmm. Now we can have those conversations now. We've grown up. I say we've grown up. These are guys in their 40s and 50s. We can have those conversations now, but they're not the sort of conversations that you have at the time. And I think it's the same in the corporate world. Is people are afraid to have that conversation. And I think the more we can actually get people to talk about mental health, and the more they can see guys like myself who have been that alpha male in that environmental role, willing to put their hand up and say, actually, I had some issues there and these techniques have helped me through them. If we can equip those guys with those techniques before they need them, whether they be in the military or whether they be working high stress, investment banking, if we can give them those techniques, then we won't see as many people with issues.
So you learn from this, then you become a teacher. Is that how it works, sort of thing?
Yes.
You get the benefit of it, and then.
My purpose now is to make sure that people don't suffer. I spent a long time. If I'd have had intervention before I did, I wouldn't have been suffering for as long. But because I had that intervention, I've seen how powerful the techniques that all these guys teach is. Actually, let's equip people with those techniques before they need them. Yeah. All too often, I don't know if you've heard about mental first aid training. It's the wrong end of mental health. If they need mental first aid, we've failed. But actually what we need to do is equip people with the resilience skills so that they don't need a mental health first aider. Surely that should be the first point of call.
Wow. Do you all learn from each other? I mean, do you pick up things, or do you just, you kind of mix and match a bit, maybe?
Yeah. Phil and I have worked together a couple of times.
In Barcelona?
Yeah, in Barcelona, yeah.
And I don't want to pry, but did you all come from the same thing, that you realised something was wrong with yourselves? You had to go and find yourself? That's a horrible expression, isn't it? Funny.
I've been finding myself for 30 years. I got into all sort of health and well-being because my daughter had allergies as a small child, and I didn't get what I needed from the medical profession at that time. So I went back to college for 3 years and studied alternative medicine. That's what I did. And from there, the stress of having a child who had anaphylaxis was overwhelming for me as a young mum at the time. And so I had panic attacks and just thought, how can I have this? So I started searching then, so I started with things like Reiki, and then I was doing meditation, and I have done many types of meditation. I've done a lot of mindfulness. I've done things like going off and sitting on a mountaintop for literally 10 days in silence. So Vipassana, so I'm always, and I think we always are. And then, I found breathwork about 5 years ago when I wasn't in a great place and I had a lot of fear. And that was mind-blowing for me, what happened in that, because I realized that there was these emotions that I was holding on to, because I always thought I never thought I was an angry person. I never really showed anger. I wasn't easily triggered with anger or anything like that. But I grew up with a very angry dad, okay? And when I did breath work, all this anger that I never knew I had inside me came out. So, it was a great healer for me.
And something you had to keep working at? Or
well, we've all got layers, haven't we?
Yeah.
So, and also, you have to find what's right for you. We're all different. And so mindfulness, I think, works for everything. We have to use that in everything. I mean, I give people tools, whatever they come to see me for, and whatever type of therapy I use. And when I speak to somebody and I look at what's going on with them, then I decide maybe this is better for them or that's better for them. But, we're all different. So you know, for some it's going to be NLP, for others it might be EFT, for somebody else it's going to be more mindfulness, somebody else is going to be breath work, or it can be a combination. Because I find, I've worked with a couple of people. I've been working with this girl who's a psychotherapist in the UK, so we've been working together, and she's doing the talking therapy with them, and I'm doing the breath work. So it's helping them to heal quicker, because we're releasing emotions, and then she can actually talk to this other girl about it. So I think it's a combination, and I think, you know, if we all work together, we'll help so many more people.
Okay, Phil, you had stress. You come from somewhere to learn that you needed to be distressing yourself.
Yeah. I think you know, I think many people that come to this, they come to it via their own journey. Yeah. I once had a friend who's a psychotherapist in London. I asked him how come he became a psychotherapist, and he said, well, when you're a tree, the best place to hide is in the forest. And I think that, you know, certainly for me, not just my journey, you know, similar to Mick, I was in the military as well, and I had loads of stuff going on, but I didn't really want to go and see someone about it. So the reason why NLP appealed to me to begin with was I wanted to educate myself out of it myself. I didn't really want to put myself in a position where I would talk about it, because that's what, you know, going on from what Mick said, that's kind of like what we were designed for in the military. So when I could go on a course and I could study and learn, and then I could apply that learning to myself, and then I found it really helped me, you know, beyond any measure that I could have ever imagined. Then I wanted to go to the next level and the next level and the next level. And it was never really my first intention to end up being a performance coach and a trainer. My first intention was really just to kind of sort out my own stuff. And I think that's probably a bracket that many people fit in. They don't feel as though they perhaps need to see what they would consider like a psychologist or a therapist, because they don't think their problems are that bad, whether that's right or wrong. But they do have stuff going on that they can't really seem to get a firm grasp over. And I think that probably applies to a much wider range of people than perhaps we would imagine.
When does someone know they need some help, I suppose? I mean, is it one of those things that people take some drastic action before they realise they shouldn't have done that, or they've gone crazy?
I think conditions can influence. I think coronavirus has been a magnifying glass. I think many people that perceived that they were doing pretty fine, that suddenly coronavirus comes along, and then you're thrown into this thing. And Mike mentioned before that you've got to train your mind. And your mind, you know, we know with neuroplasticity, your mind, you know, is malleable and trainable, and it can grow stronger, just like any other muscle in your body. And if I just got thrown onto the start line of an Ironman and I'd done no training, then I would probably not be able to do the swim. And if I did the swim, I might get a little bit into the bike, but, you know, I definitely probably wouldn't get anywhere near the run of it. That's what's happened with coronavirus. Everyone's been thrown on this Ironman mental health start line. And then suddenly people, because they've never really been tested, because they've been comfortable, have now found that when they get their security taken away, when they get their connections with loved ones taken away, when they have to isolate, when there's the uncertainty of what's out there, when their mind is getting, you know, absolutely jam-packed full of bad news from the news channels, that, you know, everything that's going on, there's aggressive coronavirus, you know, and yeah. I think that can hugely affect people's mental well-being.
Again, the next section we'll try and do all that about social media and coronavirus, but what about other stresses? I mean, birth, marriage, death, moving house, all these things. Well, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think if there's underlying stress there, and you add something on top of it, like moving house or whatever, then it's going to bring it out. And oftentimes when people come to me, as I'm sure it's the same with everybody else, it's at the stage where they've, you know, had a bit of a sledgehammer on the head, and that's when they sort of think, I need to do something. And as Phil said, you know, this whole situation over the last 18 months has sort of magnified it all. So
it takes something. Someone might go really crazy, almost, you know, really throw the toys out before they realise they need something,
or have a panic attack, like you described.
Yeah.
You know, I think that. Firstly, it's really important to understand stress is natural. You know, stress is just your nervous system going into its sympathetic mode. You know, when you go for a run, your body goes into stress. You know, when you get excited, when you go to watch a comedian and you laugh, your body goes into stress. Anytime that, you know, any of the systems in your body start to speed up and your nervous system exits homeostasis, that's really you in your stress response. But really what the important thing is that it's not necessarily the stress, it's the lens that you perceive the stress through. So, you know, I could stand up to give a presentation and be terrified, you know, and be accessing my freeze response, and every part of me just doesn't want to go out into the stage. You could be seeing the same stimulus, the same crowd presenting after me, and it's the most exciting thing that you've ever experienced. So it tells us that our lens is different to the perception of what's about to happen. So it's not necessarily about giving stress a bad sort of label. It's about understanding what it is, what it was designed for, how we can use our stress response better, how we can manage it better. And actually, I couldn't agree more than with Rosemary. Usually people kind of get to the point of asking for help when they're having a panic attack or they're experiencing anxiety for the first time, or suddenly they've been depressed for 3 or 4 weeks and they can't seem to be able to snap themselves out of it. And that's usually the start point, whether it's breath work, whether it's engaging with Mike and his mindfulness, whether it's engaging with a coach. We're all approaching the same thing, but just from different angles.
Yeah, but I mean, some people, it looks like they take it so much easier. You, Army, you know, but all this sort of thing, it was as expected, wasn't it? I mean, and you, I bet you really go into mode, don't you? And you give out orders and you do that. But at some point, when you go home at night or something, is that when it hits you or something?
Yeah, I mean, I described it as a cloak of invincibility, and every guy in the military's got that, you know, and every woman in the military's got that, you know, and they wear that whilst they're at work. It's very, very difficult to find yourself in a war zone 1 minute and then 24 hours later you're at home with a family. You know, so you go from needing and requiring that cloak of invincibility to being at home where you don't need that, and the contrast from the adrenaline and the stress to being at home is really, really difficult for people to deal with. One of the sort of key things that people can look at is how they feel. Now, if somebody starts to feel unwell in their body, for anxiety, for example, if they feel short of breath, that is generally a sign that their thought processes are off. So, you know, educating people in techniques like this is that recognizing that, you know, that feeling in your body is telling you that you're thinking in a certain way that is making you feel that way. And actually it's dealing with those thoughts and actually the values and beliefs that produce those thoughts. That's the really important thing. And that's some of the work that I know that Phil does, is he actually takes his clients, finds out what is creating those thoughts and where they're coming from. And then they're called limiting beliefs. And what he does is he collapses those limiting beliefs that takes people beyond that, which means they don't have those thoughts and they don't have that feeling in their body that can, you know, and anxiety can lead to all sorts.
But has it changed you? I mean, you seem very relaxed, very calm. Yeah. Were you an angry young man? You know, really outwardly as well as inwardly?
I was never an angry young man. Okay. But what I tend to say, so I would say, at work, you know, I never felt any work stress ever. Right. However, you know, what happened is when I left that environment and I lost a sense of purpose, then I ran a negative thought process. And that negative thought process affected my well-being. And it wasn't until I found meditation and mindfulness that I could get some distance from those thoughts and to see that what those thoughts were and how they were affecting me emotionally.
So when you got up in the morning, you had nothing to look forward to. That's another thing, isn't it? Just to get up and have something to do is important.
Yeah, sense of purpose is huge. I think it's probably a cornerstone for most people's well-being, is having a sense of purpose. Amongst, there are many things there, but the sense of purpose is massively up there on the human agenda.
Okay, well, we'll take a break on this point, and hope this has been interesting. We've got another section to go here on the Weekend Debate.